Hi everyone, it's Chrissy and with Jacynte Leger.
Hello.
Certified yoga teacher, and I'm spiritual grief coach. And today we're going to talk about loss as a catalyst to a heart's alignment. Jacynte and I have known each other for a while. Actually, my first yoga class ever was with Jacynte, and that was at least 7 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about her journey through grief, and I will open that up to you to share your journey with us.
Thank you. So yesterday actually marked 13 years since my brother passed away. So when I was 21, my brother passed away on June 26, 2005, and it was in a hit and run accident. So at that point I was living in BC, and I got a call, and it was like, my brother had died in this accident. And then my life kind of got a lot flipped upside down. It shattered my world, to be pretty honest. So then it was just like, okay, what do I do now? Okay, get on a plane. Okay, go back home. And so, the first few months we're
like going through the motions.
Through the motions.
Just that's like exactly robot mode, survival.
Yeah, absolutely. Robot mode, survival. How do I move into a place that even makes sense from here? So it was like, okay, I'm moving back home. So the first couple months were just me figuring that part out. And from there, interestingly enough, I was 21, so I really didn't have very many tools to help me deal with things. So I just went to like avoidance mode is what I would call it. So it was like, keep yourself busy. Perfect. Go find a job. Go work. So I think like literally even just a couple of weeks after I was home, I found a job instead of just taking time to like take care of myself. And so I went in that cycle of just kind of like avoidance and keeping busy.
Like the numbing, like a lot of people, that's their first instinct is like, oh, this hurts too much. I need to avoid this. I don't like this. It's just too heavy.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So there's many facets that you can do to numb.
Yeah.
And keeping busy is one of those big myths, right? Like it's keeping busy. You can heal by keeping busy, but it's what are you keeping busy with?
Yeah.
Right? Like, are you following your heart's whisper to do activities that you need to do to heal? Or are you doing activities to avoid healing? Like to avoid feeling, because you need to feel to heal, right?
Exactly.
So, exactly. So keeping busy is one of those.
Yeah.
It's right and wrong. It depends on how you implement it.
Exactly. And I think I really, like, when I look back on my journey, I feel like I had these like little tidbits of like, keeping busy that would be healthy. Like I was like, oh, I love exercise. I had started practicing yoga just a little bit before my brother died. Like I would say the same year that he passed. So I guess 2005, maybe 2004, I went to my first yoga class. And so I was doing that a little bit, going for nature walks. Just doing things that interested me. And I knew I felt good when I did those things, but I also was really busy with working and with just doing things that were numbing. So, substance abuse and all those types of things were definitely what I gravitated towards more at that point. Yeah. And then I would say, I forget which year, if it was 2007, or early 2008, I had decided to go to a yoga class. And before that, everything I had done was pretty much at home and yoga-wise. So I went to a class, and I just like, wow, it just rekindled my love of yoga and just this like knowing of how powerful it was, the breath, the movement, being really centered and focused. So I started going to class.
So you remember regularly. That one class like it was yesterday, right?
Yeah,
like
definitely.
Like it sounds like it just gave you that like freedom or that window of hope. Right? And it wasn't an overwhelming thing either, right? It was just like this in yoga, you're filling your body with breath, right? So it's almost like you gave yourself that permission to expand.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I love how it's kind of like it was this little window at the time, but like you remember it like yesterday.
Oh yeah.
And it was like how many years ago?
Yeah, I guess that would have been like early 2008.
Early 2008. Yeah. So
yeah.
Like for you to be in that time, you wouldn't have seen it as such a catalyst moment till later. But yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it was really powerful. And from there, the teacher that I was going to, she was talking about philosophy a lot more. And I was like, oh, what is this yoga philosophy? Like it really came and got me. So I ended up buying a copy of Yoga Journal, and which is a yoga magazine. And when I was reading it, there was this article that talked about specific scripture. And I was like, what is this book that they talk about? So I went and got a copy. And as I read it, it was just like, oh my goodness, I felt this. It's like it came and got me. It was like, all right, what is my purpose in this life? And that's really what it brought to the forefront, because at that point, I was like, okay, I've had this journey, and I've grown so much through it. And I knew it had something to do with what I had to share with the world, but I had no idea how to get there. I had no idea what I was supposed to do. And I just felt like really confused about everything. And that I feel like when I did pick up that book and read it, it just brought me to like, okay, follow your heart, follow, what you feel drawn to do. And from there, things will open up. And that's what I started doing.
Yeah, it's like that quiet whisper, like I call them either breadcrumbs or that quiet whisper, right? Like you have your everyday thoughts. So when you're grieving, it's very heavy thoughts, or it's that numbing activity, your to-do list, the work that you're on. And then all of a sudden this thought will pop in that is not aligned with what you're doing, kind of like that book, right? Mm-hmm. Like, because you're kind of like, your whole being was just like, what's that? Right? Like it just kind of stopped you, and it was kind of out of alignment of your normal thoughts, and you followed it.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is this feeling that I'm feeling? I like it. This feels better. This feels good. And that is what you follow to move through, a loss or a difficult situation. And it's not like you're conscious of it at the time.
No.
That you knew you were doing that.
Yeah.
But when you tap into those subtle little activities like that, like this book that, you're like, what's that book? Like that's something really, it seems really small and simple. But yet, if you had never picked up that book, right? Like
yeah, my life would be completely different. Honestly.
Yeah. So it's so subtle. I just I love it.
It's very subtle. And from me reading that book, I was like, okay, I need to learn more about yoga. I need to learn more about the philosophy. I need to, learn more about the practice. I know it's more than just postures, and it's funny enough, like I feel like I knew that on a deeper level, but like on the surface I was like, I need to teach people how to do this posture and this posture. And it was really based on the physical. And the first weekend I arrived at teacher training, which I ended up starting late 2008. It was just like I think of like Brene Brown. She has a video, a TED Talk that's so funny, and she talks about her spiritual awakening, and then she kind of like crosses out on her PowerPoint awakening and puts unraveling or like the meltdown, right? And that's totally what happened to me that first weekend. It was just like, oh my God, my life as I know it has to disintegrate for this new version of myself to come through. And it was just, And
it's like that final, that safe place, the final like permission.
Yeah.
To allow yourself to unravel, to allow yourself to feel all that stuff that you were numbing and that you weren't allowing yourself to feel. To do it all, in one shot like that.
So that was a messy time, a really messy time, because everything that I had not been feeling for the past, I guess it's 2008, so 2005. So I guess for 3 years, just all came pouring out. And it was in steps, in stages. And, it was still, I still had a lot of like numbing tools that were really ingrained at this point. Like I had been using them every day for like,
years.
So it was like, okay, like how do I shift this and, have tools to help me feel and heal? And I really feel like that was the beginning of that process, me going for yoga teacher training, me kind of implementing yogic living into my life, and it just becoming a part of me. So I feel like the really intense healing portion of grief really started for me in 2008. And yeah, by 2011, I feel like I had really, I had a good toolkit, a good toolbox for myself to be able to feel, to heal, and to process, everything that I had to process.
And it is a process. And I love, like at the teacher's training, you had your kind of initial ride of that wave of grief, right? Because you were numbing for so long, so you didn't really allow yourself to feel that wave. So you had, a few kind of come, and you handled it. I mean, you're here, right? Yeah. So we always think that it's overwhelming, but it really isn't. It's actually at the end of that, I'm sure you felt so
absolutely
peaceful and lighter.
Absolutely. And the more you resist the waves, the harder they are.
Yeah, the harder.
So you just have to like feel them, and the breath is such a, an amazing tool, and just being in your body as opposed to saying, oh, I'm gonna look at what I feel, but I'm not really gonna feel it. I'm just gonna look at it.
Just gonna look at it. Maybe it'll go away.
Maybe it'll go, oh yeah, I'm looking at it, so I must be dealing with it.
Exactly. Yes.
But there's like, no, you need to feel it.
I like that you said that, because that is a lot of what we think.
Absolutely.
If I see it, I'm dealing with it.
I was like, no, that's not true.
But another thing that I love about that teacher's training weekend, and when you were speaking, is you had that moment of decision I'm going to heal.
Yeah.
I'm going to change. It was this conscious like moment in time that says, okay, this is no longer serving me. Doesn't mean it dropped right away in that moment. But you had that moment where you're like, okay, I am done with the numbing, and I am going to use these tools and find tools to actually heal. So it's like that initial permission to feel, said, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So,
and then it turned into this beautiful unfolding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so, appreciative of the gifts that have come out of the, me kind of having to deal with this loss at a young age. And it's not like we're like, yay, this happened in my life, but it is what happened. Then you can decide to like, sink and be stuck in it, or you can decide to grow from it. So that's really, what was the option. And now it's like the tools that I've learned through that process, and, recognizing like, okay, grief, what is this? Okay, I've experienced this. When it comes out in my life, I feel like I'm definitely better equipped to, go through these periods of grief when they do show up, because life presents us with those things, whether it's, the loss of a pet, or it's the loss of a job, or an ending of a relationship, whatever it is. Like there's definitely grief processes that happen
loss
throughout
of health, moving. It's everything. I mean, it's life that we're here to experience.
Yeah.
And maybe you can talk about how yoga can really help. So we talk about how it's a tool and it really helped you, but maybe kind of like break it down a little bit, like how.
So for me, yoga was like this place where, all the to-dos of like, oh, I need to get this done, I need to get that done, I need to think about this person, that person, kind of were all like put aside for a moment. And this was time for me. It was time for me to be with myself, to breathe, to check in, to, just go with my internal flow, to be with my own energy. And from that place, I found that I was more centered in my life, and, that I could make better decisions of like, oh, what would be useful for me in this moment? So instead of just keeping busy with whatever showed up, or keeping busy with, things that were more to please others, it did give me that clarity of mind to be like, okay, for my healing, this is what I need right now, and to be able to take that time,
the permission, the space, the tool to find the stillness.
Yeah,
because that is really where a lot of the healing takes place.
Yeah,
is in that stillness, because in that stillness there's expansion, right? And that's where the breath and the movement come in with yoga. I feel is that it just naturally creates this expansion without us having to do it ourselves. Absolutely. It just creates this space, and our thoughts do fall away, like our to-do list and the weight on our shoulders. It might pop in and out during a session, but there's moments and there's seconds of this stillness, and in that, like, the movement will let go of whatever we're holding.
Yeah.
Like, I found,
absolutely. And when you're really conscious of the breath, and if an emotion does come up, and you're breathing through it and you're feeling it, you're giving it space.
Yeah.
It's being felt.
Yeah. And emotion is just this wave of information that we have labeled. If we like something, or if we're sad, or if we're happy, like, those are all labels of this wave of energy going through us. So when we give it breath and we acknowledge it, so you kind of say hello to it, like, and give it that breath, then it just kind of like, it releases with the breath. And it's magic. Like, it's subtle, and it's beautiful. And the breath is my favorite tool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like the most cost-effective tool you ever find.
Absolutely.
You always have it.
Yeah, we have it right here all the time.
But it's to know how to properly use it. I mean, we breathe by default to live, but we're not breathing deep enough. We're always up, because we spend a lot of our time up here. And I like your perspective on that, because you deal with a lot of, yoga and bringing people down into their bodies, right? Yeah. Like, we spend a lot of our time up here, so our breath is very short. But when we start bringing our attention down here and our breath, then things start to give space and expand.
Yeah, and it's really the space, to me, that's, with the breath and with the movement and just being consciously within yourself. I feel like yoga, when we practice it regularly, and when we, even if it's not regularly, it's a time to be embodied. Mm-hmm. It's embodiment. It's like, oh, I'm here right now. Yes. Like, my body, my mind are at the same spot right now. Yes, sometimes it'll wander, but you bring it back. That's practice. But when you're in that embodied state, and when you're breathing and you're with yourself, and you're like, okay, I'm uncomfortable right now, and it's okay. It's not good. It's not bad. I'm just going to be with it and feel it. You're creating that space.
Yeah, I love that. I love the embodied and the being conscious within yourself.
Exactly.
Like, we spend such time outside of ourselves, and even when we're grieving, like, to bring it back to grief a little bit, like, when we're grieving, we look to the outside on how we should be feeling or what we should be doing to move through our grief. And it's so different for everybody. Our grieving journey is unique to ourselves, and the only way the path is to be embodied within yourself.
Absolutely.
Right? So I love yoga for that reason, to help anybody through a difficult situation. And you've done some yoga for specific programs for like that type of thing, like PTSD, right?
Yep, I've done.
So I mean, that's some heavy stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Like, so I mean, if you want to maybe touch base, because there's a parallel there. I'm not saying that PTSD and grief are the same, but there's like a heaviness, and there's this constriction within the body of allowing us to feel what we're going through, right? There's that common element. So how would that?
I feel like there's this common element of dissociation. Is what they call it, dissociation. Yes. So basically, like, this is uncomfortable, I'm checking out. You know what I mean?
Bye-bye.
Yeah. So it's something that can happen, and we might not even be common that we're like, we might not even know we're checking out.
Right.
It happens so quickly, and it's just like, oh, I wasn't fully experiencing it. And it's a coping mechanism, right? It's a coping mechanism of like, okay, I can only deal with so much right now. So, I'm only going to go with what I can handle. So in the practices for yoga for PTSD and anxiety, things like that, it's really about working with our ability to relax, but also with our ability to be okay with situations that are uncomfortable and to be able to breathe within them. So in those types of practices, we do use some postures that, require muscular effort, that require holding perhaps for a longer period of time, and just being with the breath and noticing, okay, when I'm getting uncomfortable, what is my first reaction? Is it just to completely check out, or am I able to just be like, no, I'm going to sit with this, I'm going to breathe? And it's also giving yourself these controlled challenges almost, like you're on your mat, this is a safe place to explore this. And from that space, you start to build your capacity to be in these situations that, might, usually send you into a full-on stress response. Here, okay, you're starting to work with your nervous system in a way to be in stress without going into the full-blown kind of response. And we do that with our breath. Whenever you breathe deeply, when you're in a stressful situation, it calms things down. When you're in pain, you're breathing, fully, deeply, it helps with the pain management. So it's really cultivating that tool of the breath, but also other tools like our voice, other tools as incorporating movement and the breath together. So there's a lot of ways to do this. And
I love that. I love how it's so subtle, creating those uncomfortable situations in the postures, right? And moving through that, sticking with it, moving through it. It seems so simple, right? However, it's talking to our bodies and our mind and our heart, everything that says, you can do this in another situation. Right? You can do this about this, and teaching how to use the breath to move through it so they can take that tool and use it when they come across a difficult moment in grief. Okay, I'm gonna tap into my breath, and it's important to, it's that deepening, right?
Yeah.
So deepening the breath, but bringing it down.
And finding that softness within the discomfort.
Yes, talk about that.
So yeah, I feel like, when it relates to grief, maybe it would, maybe I would call that compassion and acceptance. I feel like maybe that's what it is. When you're resisting, you're just like, oh, I don't want to feel this right now. I don't want to feel this right now. I don't want to feel this. Why am I still in this space? Or whatever it is that's showing up, you're completely resisting and you're being hard on yourself. Right? So you're in a contracted state.
Yeah.
But then when you go into acceptance and compassion, it's like, okay, this is what I'm feeling right now.
That's the softness.
Breathe into it.
Yeah.
And it's okay, giving yourself permission to feel it. It's okay. And it's not just okay, it's perfectly normal. And you're allowed to feel this, and it's a valid way to feel, and just kind of giving yourself that loving space. So, within our practice on the mat, maybe what that looks like is, when warrior 2 becomes really uncomfortable and, my shoulders are starting to reach up to my ears and everything's feeling tight. Okay, can I modify the posture a little bit to find more space? Maybe I need to flip my palms up to find my shoulders going down. Maybe I need to narrow my stance. Maybe I need to straighten my leg a little bit, take a few more deep breaths. Okay, where can I find my softness? So it's kind of cultivating that compassion and that acceptance of here's where I am.
Which is key
Let's
to
make
healing.
This comfortable. Let's make this soft. Not that it's comfortable, but when you soften it, it becomes more comfortable, even though, it's not an emotion that we perceive as good, or, what I mean? Yeah.
I love that. The softening of it. Yeah. I really love that.
And softness is part of strength. Like we don't.
Do you want to make that connection for them?
Strength without softness is rigidity. That's what I would call it. And when you think of something rigid, it can break really easy. But if you have something that's strong, but that's able to,
like a tree,
shift and move, then it has more.
That reminds me of a tree.
Yeah.
Tree is very strong, but you see it in storms. It's got this softness so that it will flexible so it won't break.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's that same principle. If we're rigid all the time, it's still a contraction. It's still us being tight, even though we've cultivated all this muscular strength, But when we bring the breath in and we say, okay, what's my jaw doing? Okay, relax my jaw. What actually needs to be engaged right now and what can be soft? Then we're creating the space within the engagement.
Awesome. I love that. And I keep going back, like as we sit here, I keep going back to those 3 years after you kind of like decided, I'm going to heal. I'm going to use grief. And I keep seeing this vision of like a tunnel with these lights, right?
Yeah.
Is that like, can you kind of just maybe describe how you moved through that period of time? Since it keeps coming up for me, I'm going to ask you.
Absolutely. So that period of time, and that was kind of like my post-numbing.
Yeah. Or the transition from numbing to healing.
Exactly. Yeah. They're like, okay, I'm healing now. At first it was quite messy because I was just like, I need to dismantle this life that I have right now because it's built on a foundation that it's no longer even valid at this point. It makes no sense. So it was just kind of like, my reality had shifted so much and I was just like, okay, what do I do from here? So I did decide for that period of time to just, work part-time and to focus on studying yoga. So I ended up having a little less on my plate. So I went for a lot of walks. And for a while, I was feeling really tired. I had ended a relationship that I was in and was just kind of grieving that process too. So it was like double grief going on, like all the grief from my brother's passing that I hadn't really dealt with, and then the grieving from this relationship that had ended. So I had just I gave myself permission to just feel whatever I needed to feel and to practice yoga in a way that felt useful for me. And for the first few months, my yoga practice was really, really, really gentle because that's what I needed. And I would go outside for walks all the time. Just like walking was so therapeutic for me. And I did a lot of meditation. It was cry when you need to cry, and just, gave myself permission to do that. And then eventually, whenever I felt a shift happening, like, oh, now I need more movement, I would just listen to that and go with it. And then after my first teacher training, I was like, oh, I feel called to deepen my knowledge. So I went for my 300-hour teacher training. Like literally I finished in May, and then I started my 5 training, or the 300 component, in October.
Wow.
And then I was like, there's a Kundalini yoga teacher training happening at the same time, and that may never come around here again, like really, because the teachers are coming from all over to us. It's like, I have to do that too. Like, I feel so
Which is my favorite class, by the way.
Yeah. So I was just like, I can't pass this up. So then I ended up starting that training at the same time as I was doing my other training.
Wow.
So I was in 2 yoga teacher trainings at the same time. And the Kundalini training just like brought everything up to another level of like letting go and of peeling off layers and of like experiencing my grief. And that gave me more depth with my meditation, with my breath, with kind of developing that commitment to living from my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a really big life-changing experience.
When I hear about your journey, when I look back, There's like the conscious choice to commit, to heal. There's the self-love component is huge.
Yeah.
Like you need to be so gentle with yourself and to listen, but you need to find that stillness to listen, however that may be, even if it's not yoga, it's a walk in the park or something else. You know, some people it's actually, you know, something like knitting, right? It's to find that stillness and for allow you to be embodied and to hear your whispers. And to follow them, to have the courage and strength to follow them, because, you know, you can notice them and not do anything with them, but it's the conscious choice to say, I'm going to follow that. And I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, and really that's big part of the journey is that self-love and like giving yourself permission, you know, instead of being like, oh, I should be doing something more active, I should be at the gym, I should whatever it is. You know what, if that's not what I need right now, that's not what I need right now. Right. And I really had given myself permission to do that, which was really necessary.
Yeah, and I'm a strong believer of should just be thrown out the window.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every time I hear myself think that or say it, I'm like, wait a minute, I gotta look at this, because am I doing something for something outside of me? Because that's what shoulds are, right?
Yeah, that's what we impose on ourselves.
Yeah,
because of beliefs or, you know, what society tells us. The shoulds are like, oh, for me to be an acceptable human being, this is the standard I should be at, or something. It's really funny.
And just to give like a quick example, I mean, when we lost our son, our baby at birth, my husband didn't really go to the gravesite. Like, he came at the funeral, but he's never really been since. And a lot of people would say, well, he should go. And you know what? He doesn't have to. I went when I felt like it, not all the time. But it's like an example of grief. Like, there's definitions in how you should handle your grief. And that's one of them. A lot of people said, well, he's not dealing with this grief because he's not showing up at the gravesite. Well, that's not true. Because everybody's grieving journey is different. And we also, our grief is with us all the time. It's not sitting at the graveyard, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone's journey is different.
Yep.
Everyone's journey with grief, everyone's journey with whatever shows up in their life is different. So why would there be one specific way for everyone? Yeah.
And before we wrap this up too, with your brother, I know, like, when I have lost loved ones, I have signs from them that they're around.
Yeah.
I would love to hear. And your brother, you haven't mentioned his name.
His name's Gabriel. And the definitely for me, the like signs like, oh, he's here is when I find feathers. Definitely when I find feathers, that's him trying to communicate with me. And my mom's sign for her, it's the crows. When she sees crows. And when I see the crows, I think of that too.
Yeah, and I think your mom's watching. She's joined us. Hi, Denise. Hi, Gwen and Tracy, Vanessa, and Danielle. Hi, ladies. So for you it's feathers. For your mom it's crows, and I'm sure that when you do go through troubled times now, like difficult times, because we're not immune to it, once we heal, they do show up.
Absolutely.
Does your brother show up more?
Definitely. And at first it was kind of like, how would I explain it? It's like I knew that, okay, he left his physical form, but his essence is still there. I'm still connected to that, but it was almost like I had forgotten that I could communicate with him. It was just like, and it took many years before I actually was like, okay, I can talk to him. Like, it's like I can do that.
It's like a new relationship, right? Like you have to grieve the old one to be open to the new one.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? So now I talk to him.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I talk to him. So I give myself permission to do that and know that it's a great way to stay in touch and to remember and to just to like you say, it's a different relationship, or it's a different phase of it.
Yeah, it's a different phase.
It's a different phase of it. So it's like, oh, the relationship continues.
Exactly.
It didn't end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if anybody has any questions, they can type it in. And Jacynte, I would love you to share how people can find you and what you're up to and all that stuff.
So I teach group classes. I have classes, and right now I'm teaching Kundalini yoga, restorative yoga on a weekly basis, as well as hatha at the beach. So I teach in Moncton at Bodywise Yoga, Pilates, and Massage Therapy. And I start teaching next week at Abueto Beach in Capelé, and I start tomorrow in Grand Digue. But yeah, if you want information on any of those, I do have a Facebook page called Jacynte Leger Yoga and Wellness, and you can get in touch with me there. So for private work, which I find is phenomenal, because we get to, start where you are, and I've been experiencing yoga and practicing yoga and learning yoga for many years now. So my training started 10 years ago. So all the tools that I've kind of picked up along the way, we just craft a practice for you, based with the tools that I've learned over the years that, help you kind of go through what you're going through right now. So
and I can contest to that. When I was pregnant with Anna, which would have been the first pregnancy after the one that I lost, I had private yoga with you throughout that entire pregnancy. Yeah. And it brought so much peace and kept me so grounded. And it's a whole other level than class. Like yoga class is great to find that stillness, and it's still, I love yoga class, but I find the private sessions just go even deeper. Absolutely. Right? Yeah. Like I recommend it if anybody, if it speaks to your heart, explore it, because it was a beautiful time, and you're good at it.
Thank you.
Because it was a rocky time for me, and that those classes kept me grounded, kept me really, really grounded. So we'll definitely put your Facebook page with this post so people can find you. And just quickly, the Kundalini, the restorative, and the Hatha. What's the difference?
So Kundalini yoga, I would call this a more energetic practice, like based on the subtle bodies. So a lot of you may have heard about the chakra system. So it's the subtle energy body that, everything, like humans, animals, like we all have this subtle energy. Everything is subtle energy. So, but there's basically it's a style of yoga that helps us kind of hone that subtle energy and basically raise our own vibration so that we can kind of embrace a new awareness of ourselves. And it helps us kind of release what no longer serves for us, what we thought maybe was us, but really was what society wanted from us, or something we picked up along the way. So it's really a practice that is really internally drawn and helps us kind of get in touch with that true essence. So we use a lot of physical postures, we use chanting, we use a lot of breath techniques, relaxation with a gong, so it's like sound vibration, and we use meditation as well. So within that entire class, like all those elements are touched on, and it's a very uplifting style of yoga. Mm-hmm. And the restorative is more about tapping into your ability to relax, heal, and repair. So it's a style of yoga that's very passive. We use a lot of supports, so bolsters, blocks, cushions, blankets, to prop our body up into a specific yoga posture. And then we stay there and we breathe and we let go. So within these different shapes, we kind of tend to let our nervous system relax, but also, depending on the shape you're in, there's also different benefits, whether it's for your back or whether it's for emotional states, you know what I mean? So, in this class, it's really about turning inward and just going into that deep, 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 deep stillness for your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of, I find it really good for people who are very stressed out, people who are exhausted, people who are recovering from sickness or surgery. It's a very gentle and supportive style of yoga.
It is. I've also experienced your restorative, and it is so like, it's a relaxation like no other, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the hatha classes are probably what some of you have experienced more as traditional yoga, I guess I would call it. So we use the breath, we use a variety of postures, standing, seated, reclining. We use relaxation and sometimes meditation or different breathing techniques or philosophical concepts are interweaved into the class. And it's just a really good way to really get in touch with your body, feel your body, bring your awareness from the outside to what's happening with your body and within yourself.
The traditional what everybody. Which is also beautiful.
Oh,
yoga. I just love yoga.
Yeah, exactly.
So Debbie Leger says, did your class and loved them.
Oh, yay. Hi, Debbie.
So that's everything. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, Chrissy.
Yeah, yoga's been a big part of my world too, and you have. I mean, you were my first class and been with me ever since. And so I'm very grateful for this conversation.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing your heart with us.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure, an honor, and I'm so happy to do this, to have done this.
Yeah. And so I'll put up her Facebook page, and if you're looking for me, it's chrissyann.com, and I'll put that up as well. So thanks, and have a great day. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.